Working with a brief. Briefs are what separate designers from mind readers. A brief is usually a document of some sorts that contains all relevant information about the project you're about to take. Usually a good brief will have a wireframe attached to it, but it's not a rule by any means. You should expect to see the following: company name, company information, existing website if any, competitor websites, comments regarding how the site should be structured, a logo in vector or PNG format, and so on. When you ask for a brief outside a platform like 99 Designs, you can expect to see varying information. Some clients rely on very short briefs, thinking this won't limit your creativity. That or they might be lazy. On the flip side, some clients feel the need to compensate for that book they never wrote, so you can expect pages upon pages of every single detail in the website. Both options are terrible for us designers. What you need to do, again, outside a platform, is to create a brief template of your own. This should include all the information you need to get started. I recommend you work on your own brief, both on presentation and content. I don't want to include an example of my own because this needs to be an individual thing, something you can put your own identity and branding upon. So take the time to create something visually appealing that also has everything you need. A simple Word document is fine, but you can also create something in Photoshop and export it as a PDF that can later be filled in by the client. The big questions should always be asked. How many pages do you need? Provide a logo in a PNG or AI format. Do you have a preferred color scheme? Who are your competitors? Which of them have the best design? How about functionality? And so on. The idea is to get as much information as possible, but without forcing the client to take the whole day off to fill out your form. Think about the absolute musts in order to keep the time down to a minimum. Your form should be easy to understand, written in plain words without any over-extravagant design, preferably in a universal format like PDF or doc, or you can use whatever you think works best for your client. These are almost universal though, so they're pretty safe. I understand some people are extremely busy and they don't have time to waste, but you always need something to work on besides a simple conversation. It's either a brief or a wireframe with a few links to the competitors' websites and maybe the existing website of the company. In case the client comes up with some excuses in order not to fill out the brief, you have two choices. You can drop the project because the client is clearly not a dream to work with, either too busy, too lazy, too arrogant, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Or the second choice is to considerably increase your quote in order to accommodate for the inevitable revision work you'll have to do. Either way, be prepared for a lot of stress. In most cases, you won't face situations like this, but if you find yourself too often under these circumstances, you might want to reconsider your approach. Maybe you're asking for way too much information. Maybe your brief has complicated terms. Maybe the design is too distracting, or possibly the client can't open up the document. Think about all these things if you see a pattern emerging. For example, if you see a block of text like this, you'll surely be discouraged to read it. If it were better formatted, things might be different. The same can be said about your brief. You can also simply ask for feedback on your document in case you have doubts about it. Most clients will be happy to give their 2 cents about it. I also need to mention one thing. There should be a clear distinction between a brief on a crowdsourcing platform like 99 Designs, Crowdspring or even Odesk, Freelancer.com, Elance and so on, and one-on-one briefs. So if the client gives you a specific set of requirements, you should consider them more than the equivalent crowdsourcing site demands. This is because you have no competition. On the other hand, if 10, 50 or 100 other designers read the same brief, most of them will produce the same design. In that case, you need to come up with your own twist, with your own interpretation. Try and stand out from the crowd. Try and imagine what everybody else would do after reading the brief, and try one-upping them. It's critical you understand this point because otherwise you'll be left struggling. In both cases, though, I recommend you take the client's requests lightly. But even more so in the case of crowdsourcing projects. Simply put, you shouldn't give his brief too much credit. So if he asks for a Web 2.0 design, I might ignore that. Flat design? Again, I might ignore that as well. No stock photos? Why not? So I'd question everything based on my knowledge. I don't want to create a design custom fitted to his ideas. Instead, I want to create an awesome tailor-made design for his business needs. Again, this doesn't imply I'm a business consultant or that I'm a specialist in that particular field. No, But if I've made 50 other websites like that one, you can bet your house I know a thing or two about it. This is where things get tricky and very hard to explain. You don't want to be arrogant, but you do have to use your judgment wisely. This is a matter of finesse and subtlety. The subject is so delicate, I've never read any tips like this from anyone else. It's quite a harsh thing to say, disregard the client's brief or wishes. It may come across as being arrogant, abrupt, or simply too harsh. But that's not what I'm saying. You should take his points into consideration. But at the end of the day, you have to use your own judgment and experience to make design decisions. Let's expand on the example I gave. The client says he doesn't want stock photos, he hates them. As a side note, this actually happened to me. After considering everything, I decided to use some very nice photos. Not your everyday cheesy shaking hands stock photos, but images from a website like Shutterstock nevertheless. The client loved it. He hated the tacky, overused ones that were all over the web, the ones with 5 business people in cheap suits, 1 black, 1 Hispanic, 1 Asian, 1 white, 1 woman, the one where they're all at a meeting. This is why I recommend you think twice before following the brief to the letter. I know this is something that's quite easy to misunderstand, but nevertheless it's an important part of being a freelancer and mastering web design. So if it's a crowdsourcing website, don't give it too much credit, use it very loosely. If it's a personal client, give it more thought, but still don't follow it to the letter. So to sum up, never work without a brief and/or a wireframe, and make sure you're asking for the right information in your document. Also, never get too hung up on the client's wishes. Instead, use your own experience and judgment.